And it's the opposite of school. Like school for me was remember a load of facts to regurgitate in an exam. Whereas this was saying, what is your lived experience? What is your hypothesis? What is your philosophy? What sense are you making of the world?
Today I'm talking to Steve Chapman, and Steve is an artist, he's a writer, speaker, consultant, and coach, and he plays in this space of creativity and the human condition.
There are no answers. There is no solution. There is no thing. There is like we engage with the world and lives like there is an answer there, but I can't quite find it yet. But if I just do this, and that relaxing into there is no answer. There is only your moment by moment experience.
I actually met Steve at a local artist market here in Kingston in London, and the reason we actually bumped into each other was we had our stalls right next to each other, and Steve didn't have a cover over his stall, and it started raining really heavily that day, and Steve popped into our tent for some shelter, and we basically connected over our artwork, and I was immediately drawn to Steve's quirky and imperfect looking illustrations. But the more you look at them, the more you start to unlayer this deeper hidden meaning about, pretty much who we are as humans and about the human condition.
The seeds of shame are sown when we're in creative flow and we're interrupted and shamed. Like I might be doodling at school and I'm told that's not what you do. And so we learn really early in life that actually we must mistrust our spontaneity because bad things may happen.
And something that I find super inspiring about Steve is that he's not afraid to play with his creativity. And that's something that I find pretty difficult to do because with my design training, with my corporate experience, everything has to have a predictable outcome. And it's really difficult to let go of that need for an outcome. And that's something I'm hoping to learn from Steve today. A lot of massive projects that Steve has started, it actually started as random, pointless activities where he didn't have any expectation of a particular outcome.
If I'd sat down and thought, right, I'm going to create a poster, get 4,000 of them, 55 countries on every continent of the planet, it would never have happened. Never have happened. I'd had to let it happen.
Steve Chapman, welcome to Design Feeling.
Thank you. So, that's such a lovely introduction. And it makes me think if it didn't rain that day, maybe we wouldn't be here now. I just love how chain of events, we would have spoken, but I wouldn't have been sheltering with you in your tent. But no, thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the rain, but sometimes it can lead to beautiful connections.
Yeah.
So how have you been?
I never know how to answer that question.
It's a very classic British small talk question.
Yeah, I always answer it in a confusing way because I answer it literally. It's like, well, I just got back from taking the dog to the vet, and she was okay. What else did I do this morning? I got a load of washing up to do, and
the usual.
Yeah, and I'm catching up on emails this morning, so I always just end up answering what I'm doing. But no, I'm good. I'm good.
Nice. So this is a question that I haven't really asked probably any of my guests, but I thought it's topical for our conversation today. And I wanted to just start by asking, who are you?
Who am I? That's a really good question. I think I'm a creature that's obsessed with answering that question. And that, I don't know. But isn't that fascinating to not know? I mean, I can say, my name's Steve, I'm a white man living in London from the UK, and these are my jobs that I do, but that's not who I am really, is it? So I'm deeply fascinated by that. Who am I in relation to myself and everything else? And I think that's what drives a lot of my work. I'm fascinated with not knowing, so I sort of want to not know myself even more. And I think we go the other way with personal development. We're trying to solve something or resolve something, but yeah, I like to remain somewhat of a mystery to myself.
I guess that's a reality that is pretty difficult for us to come to terms with, right? And the reason I say that is we get assigned structured identities from day one. It's like, all right, you're a child, you're a toddler, and then you're a student at school, or you are a sports person or an athlete, and then you go into university, and then you go to get a job, and you're pretty much assigned these roles. Like, okay, you are an engineer or a marketer or whoever, and we so strongly attach ourselves to those identities. And we basically associate that question, like, who are you, to that identity, saying, okay, hey, I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I'm a plumber, or whoever, right? What was the identity that you remember attaching yourself to earlier in your life or career?
Yeah. I mean, I can completely relate to that. I think I was utterly consumed by that labeling and falling into that for many years. My earliest thing that I can remember, I don't know, probably aged 6, 8, something like that, was I wouldn't have even described myself as an artist, but I liked making stuff. I liked drawing stuff. I liked making music. I liked recording radio shows on a little cassette player. I just liked making stuff. And yeah, I wouldn't have described myself as an artist then, but that really early thing was this is just what naturally feels like the type of thing that I do. And I guess that erodes over time. School certainly eroded that. Then going into the world of work, it's like if you can't label it, it doesn't exist. And then certain labels you give yourself don't have prospects for earning money and doing well and being part of a functioning society. So yeah, I think they were the earliest labels. And I think I've gone back to that. I think it's like a U-shaped thing in my life that I've sort of reconnected more with 7 and 8-year-old me.
Who is that person, the 7-year-old or 8-year-old Steve?
I think it's someone that hasn't quite labelled the way they think and see the world and their imagination works and respond and talk. They haven't yet labelled that as wrong or broken or dysfunctional in some way. Whereas what soon happened after that was not good at school, not good at these things, don't think in a conventional way. And it sort of starts to get labelled as, oh, that's not good stuff, I need to mask or readjust. So I think it's a free but not very wise creature back then. And hopefully now I'm recovering that freedom also with a bit more wisdom, being a lot older now.
Free but not wise. So would you say now you are free and wise?
I don't know. I'm also brilliant at contradicting myself. I think I was probably wiser then. That was a very Western way of thinking of wisdom, is like experience and knowledge. But if wisdom is really being open to possibility and not knowing, I was probably wiser then. But that's part of that's what I'm trying to get back to now, is for nothing to have any particular point to it, for nothing to need a label, for nothing to be consistent. So I guess, yeah, I think I probably was wiser then. And I just fell into the trap of labelling that as maybe not as wise.
So you spent 20 years in the corporate world as a culture change / human development expert. What made you then transition into this life of, I guess, more creative freedom, maybe?
Yeah. I think I started to realise that two things, maybe. One was that was only ever meant to be a temporary thing while I pursued my career in radio. And it's like, hold on, this has been 20 years now. That's not temporary. And the other thing was thinking, this is crazy, this world. It makes no sense to me. It's like, am I doing anything that I really want to do? Am I really making any difference? And so there was a point so I went straight into the world of work from school. I did A-level geography just so I could go up mountains, didn't pass that, and got a job in a factory. And it was through working in the factory in that same organisation that I gradually worked my way up because I was good at working with people. And I think I fell into that trap of I think the whole reason, one of the things that kept me in that role was self-doubt. And it's that mantra of, this is the best you're going to get because you're sort of broken and not very good in some way. So don't rock the boat. And it was through doing a lot of development sort of in my 30s, I guess, that I started to really challenge that assumption. Various things that I did, thinking, actually, no, what if the reason that none of this makes sense to me, I don't enjoy it, is just because it's not for me? So there's that sort of turning point. But I just fell into that. I had no desire to do that work. I wanted to work in radio when I was at school. And I saw a career advisor, and they, for some reason, I went to see the career advisor with my parents there, which is a really bad idea, I think. And I said I want to work in radio.
To reinforce their beliefs onto you.
No, exactly. And I remember there was two things that I said. I said, I want to work in radio, or I want to work in the music industry. And I remember saying maybe as a roadie, just to start to work out how it works. And the career advisor just looked at my parents and said, well, roadies, that's not a job. And he said, in radio, you have to be really good to get into radio. And so I don't recommend that either. And it's just like, I believed that, and my parents believed that. So yeah, I sort of fell into that.
What did they mean by good?
I mean, they're right. Radio is a very cutthroat industry that is very... only few people rise to the top to make a huge amount of money. But I think it was that. I think he was totally focusing on what is the best way to make lots of money consistently, pension, all of those types of things. And perhaps only the people presenting a national breakfast show get that. So I think that's what he meant by good, rather than what is something that is fascinating and enjoyable and aligned. And this is where podcasting has democratized radio, because you can have that as an outlet. But yeah, I think there was some judgments around who is this kid who wants to do this weird thing that most kids don't want to do, and he can't even explain why he wants to do it and articulate it very well. It was just an instinct for me. And then I fell into that world, and part of it was like self-doubt, thinking, well, shouldn't rock the boat. I'm earning some money. And the other thing was that I was just good at it. So thinking of culture, I'm always questioning things, but how do people work? Why is this happening? Not believing any of the very linear, logical models of culture and culture change. They're all nonsense. They're all just designed to reduce anxiety. So I sort of found a way of challenging in a way that was, I guess, compassionate and curious. And then, yeah, that point in my 30s of just thinking, actually, no. It's at that point that I started dismantling my life, I think. Like thinking all these things that have just been support rods. What happens if I gently take them away?
What were you hoping to achieve out of that?
My very short and unhelpful answer is I've no idea. But I think that's a theme in all of my work and some of the projects you've mentioned. It's just there is an embodied somatic instinct that this is what is being called for. This is what I need to do. And I have it less now, but I'd always get in battles between my instinct and my logical mind. So some of the first things I did was like going part-time in that job, which doesn't sound very scary now, but there's that whole battle of like, actually I need to do this. And my head going, no, don't be ridiculous. You're going to lose this money. Where are you going to get the money from? It's just, no, I'm going to do it. And then leaving that job completely. And then being in a consultancy, that I went straight into a consultancy, and then leaving that. And I think it is the thing that I'm not hoping for something, but I'm just really trusting that instinct that there's something that if I give it attention and love and curiosity, something fascinating will unfurl, but I don't know what it is. And that was, yeah, I think that underpins all of my work now.
Was this a gradual kind of process, or
yeah,
did it just happen?
No, I mean, I think if it was a TED talk, there'd be one event and one conversation that changed everything, but I don't think life works like that. But yeah, it was a gradual thing. So it was just because the nature of doing the sort of culture consulting work, you learn a lot about yourself through doing that. And a lot of the training I did, I started training a lot in Gestalt psychology, which still underpins a lot of my work. And so that started nurturing some stuff. Then I think the big events, and there's a series of them, so that led to me doing some training with the NTL Institute, which is an American institute, National Training Laboratories, that founded a lot of the group relational theory post-World War II. And I went to do a year's training with them. And the first module of that was a thing called a T group, which I don't know if you've come across a T group before.
No.
It was basically 16 people sitting in a circle for 40 hours with no agenda. And the only thing you can talk about is what's going on for you. So you can't talk about anything else other than what's going on. And you have two facilitators whose job is just to make sure people are okay and that you're following the process. It's not 40 hours solid. It was 10 hours a day for 4 days. But you can't hide from yourself in that environment. And weirdly, T groups are meant to be like as diverse as possible. I was the only man in my T group. Mix of women from all different places, all different ages. And so I think that was such a significant thing in like asking myself who I am. But that wasn't the thing that changed everything. That led me on to go to do a master's degree at Ashridge, which was just, again, it was people that knew me and knew how I thought said, yeah, you'll be good at this. And I wouldn't have done Ashridge without the T group experience. And then as a result of that, I mean, the master's was amazing. I did A-levels, as I said. I got a D in A-level geography. And I felt sick when I first got to Ashridge. It's just felt like such an academic place. It's like Hogwarts. And it's like, I don't belong here. And my first assignment, which was a pass-fail assignment to get onto the program, I wish I had it, I can't find it. But my original draft, I wrote in what I thought was good academic voice. And it was all very, so-and-so says this theory about something, and this is a theory, and this is blah, blah, blah. And my tutor at the time delivered some really harsh feedback, but was so important. He said, this all sounds very intellectual, but I can't see you in this. You need to write from your reflexive perspective. If you can't do that, you won't make it on this program. So I was devastated, thinking, oh no, I fucked it up already. But he encouraged me to just write from my own perspective. And it's the opposite of school. Like school for me was remember a load of facts to regurgitate in an exam. Whereas this was saying, what is your lived experience? What is your hypothesis? What is your philosophy? What sense are you making of the world? And then use theory to add into it. But that first perspective of it's amazing. Like someone is really interested in this crazy way that I see the world. And I did brilliantly on that master's. I got an overall distinction in the master's, and my dissertation got the highest mark at the time I'd ever rewarded for a dissertation. So that for me was like a massive thing of like, oh, maybe I should listen to my own perspective a bit more. And then obviously leaving the world of work and various other things. But I think it was over that period of time, rather than one event, there was like something was bubbling up that I just kept on exponentially letting bubble up.
So a lot of us are in the world of work, especially corporate work. And my experience of corporate world is there are certain targets you need to hit. You know, you're working towards certain KPIs, predictable outcomes, reusable processes, efficiency. How would you, I guess, inject a bit more, creative freedom into such methodical systems, which is all about efficiency rather than seeing what happens? Because they don't want to see what happens. They want to know exactly what the outcome will be based on what methods you follow.
Yeah.
So although, the corporate lingo for that might be experimentation, but and I remember watching one of your talks where you said experimentation is only it's an experiment when you don't know what's going to happen. But, stakeholders want to know exactly what's going to happen from day one.
Yeah, it's riddled with contradictions, isn't it? I mean, I think I'll answer your question about creative freedom in two ways. But for me, it's just even in subtlety of the language gives us a clue that you described in the world of work. I'm looking out my window. Where is this world? Where is this world of work? It's like, where's the portal to get into this world of work? Because literally, it's the same world. And I'm not criticising what you're saying, but it becomes so dominant in language. It's the world of work. And we talk about the organisation as if it's a thing. The organisation doesn't exist. It's not a thing. You can't put it in a wheelbarrow. Now, you can put buildings and stuff, but it's the same patterning of human interaction as we are now, as the people are out on the street in Surbiton at the moment, as maybe people in a war zone are, or people going to the theatre together. It's the same patterning of human interaction, but there's different needs, there's different norms that we're paying more attention to. And it's one of the things I went on to teach on the consulting masters at Ashridge. And we'd get lots of questions around, so had to do this in an organisation. And I'd always ask, what is this thing you're calling an organisation? Because when we start to strip it back, we realise that there isn't more or less creative freedom in this world of work that's illusionary. It's just something happens to us in relation to others. There'll be a certain
How do you mean?
So Eric Fromm wrote a really good book called Escape from Freedom. And in it, he talks about, I've simplified his language because I understand it better. But in it, he talks about intrinsic and extrinsic freedom. So extrinsic freedom being the amount of freedom, and I think of it as freedom of spontaneous self-expression. So extrinsic freedom is the amount of freedom of spontaneous expression I feel I can have around here without being rejected or humiliated or attacked or something. And then intrinsic freedom is that same amount but within me. So the types of things that I may have an idea, but I will berate myself for it, or I have my inner critic or my superego. And that amount of freedom, the potential for that doesn't change whether in the world of work or not, in reality, but it does in our experience of it. And I think in the world of work, we just get really interesting patterns. And I'm calling it the world of work in inverted commas, but I'm not going to keep doing inverted commas because it doesn't work on a podcast to start with. But there's something about, I'm fascinated by that moment that we walk through the doors of an office. What changes? It's like outside is this messy, largely unpredictable, strange thing. And then we go in and it just seems like it's more ordered. So I think that's the question, is like, how do we adjust ourselves? What are the subtle adjustments we make to ourselves and how we experience others and our expectations as we go through the doors? And that back to the whole thing of more creative freedom, I don't know. Because everything's on a contextual case-by-case basis. If there's a specific example, then we might be able to work that out. But I think it's another trap to do with creativity. We want this amorphous, strange, emergent, imaginative, challenging thing, but in ways that are repeatable, predictable, controllable, and measurable. And that's crazy, isn't it? That's never going to work. But I think that Ralph Stacey, who was a scholar who was quite a big influence on my work at Ashridge, he used to say most of the traditions that organisations do are simply institutionalised defences against anxiety. They reduce our anxiety enough that we can function and interact, and helps us forget that none of us are really in control of anything, really. And so I think a way to start to explore creative freedom is it's what a guy called Barry Mason called safe uncertainty. How can we create a place where we experience safe uncertainty? Which means that things can be uncertain but feel safe at the same time. Because we're quite freaky creatures, aren't we? We're hairless, upright apes that we can't fall very far, we can't run very fast, we can't swim very fast, we die if it's too cold, we die if it's too hot. We've in evolutionary terms, it's not that long ago that we were prey rather than predators. We're standing on a ball of rock in the infinity of space, flying around a massive nuclear explosion beyond which we don't know what's happening. But we worry about putting pen to paper to do a drawing. So I think we're naturally predisposed to be anxious, and some of that manifests in the workplace. And also, I think with creative freedom in organisations, I always ask the question, really is that what you want? Because there's some fundamental things that I'd say to a CEO that's saying, I want more creative freedom of my people. And it would be, first of all, say, really? My second question would be, what are you going to do when someone does something you don't like? I'd ask, what are you prepared to let go of? Because you're part of the problem. It's like this whole thing of we describe organisational life is like we describe it's like being stuck in traffic. You're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. You're part of this patterning. And quite often it's like when you ask those questions, what are you going to let go of? What are you going to do when someone does something that you don't like? You realise that they're not really serious about it. And I'm okay with that. I think I'd rather there was an organisation that said, we're not interested in creativity whatsoever. You come here like ants to do this work. And that's the deal. I prefer that to this horrible, and people go there because they want to. I mean, not people being like trapped in that. But that feels easier to work with than this. We are open, we are free, we are innovative, but we're not really. We don't really want anything to change around here. So that was a big ranty monologue around your question about creative freedom. I think it completely starts with the individual thinking, how am I different here? How am I different now? What would it need to change for me to, I don't know, even wear slightly different clothes? Or the organisation I was working with a month or so ago was horrified that I turned up in jeans. It's like I turned up naked. Because for them, that was beyond the norm. And it challenged some stuff. So I'm not saying jeans are a creative thing. It could be that I wore a pinstripe suit to Glastonbury or something. I don't know. It's just showing up different to the norm. What happens when something is different to the norm? Greg Reitson said, his quote that I loved was, change is news of difference. So how okay is it to be different, to show up as different? How threatened do I feel and how threatened do others feel by that?
Yeah, I think a lot of those rules and norms are dictated by the environment and the context that you're in, right? Different tribes have different rules, norms of behavior. And I guess we are conditioned to follow them subconsciously if we want to be part of that group and not get thrown out into the wilderness where we might get attacked and eaten and die. Yeah,
absolutely. And it comes down to, I mean, people may laugh at that, but I think fundamentally we're programmed that. Is as higher order mammals, the herd and being around other humans is so important to us. And that threatens our superego and our like really early structure of our inner critic. It's like, if we lose contact with important human beings when we're tiny, tiny infants, we can't survive. But that what you've just said there reminds me of that. That's my interest in the role of the outsider in creativity, the role of the inexpert in creativity, because the untrained person never knew the rules, so they accidentally break them. And so, like, it's my interest in outsider art made by people that have never been trained in art, make weird and strange but really visceral art. And I'd always look to an outsider, and there could be any number of ways you describe an outsider, to bring creative freedom than an expert. This is the whole Shunryu Suzuki idea, isn't it? In the mind of a beginner, there are infinite possibilities. In the mind of an expert, there's a few. So that's one of the things why I always try to approach stuff to deepen not knowing. Because as soon as I become an expert in something, it's like, I've lost it then.
Yeah. And that's something that is difficult to do when you're being paid to be an expert.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, this is the really important thing. This is when people say, what do you do? It's like, are you asking how I earn money or what do I do? And they're different questions. It's like, how can you earn money? Versus how can you earn lots and lots of money? Or how can you earn enough money to survive? Versus how can you just experience freedom in the world? I think they're different questions and they're all interlinked, because it clearly is much easier to go along with norms. Because the way that society is structured, and I'm just saying this from my own experience, it's really difficult to swim outside of those and support yourself or a family or anything like that.
So is there a point to, swimming out of those norms?
I don't know. I can't not do it. Because it's just that instinct. It's like, oh, what happens if I do this? And I just feel like I think when it feels like my my freedom of spontaneous expression is getting too curtailed, I feel like I'm just shriveling up. And that makes it even harder the more that I move towards that to get paid work. I mean, you get some really good, interesting paid work, people that are up for it, but it's almost like becoming less and less generally employable the more you move towards that. But I can't not do it. It makes no sense. I have that thing that like my head's going, come on, you had this nailed 15 years ago. What are you doing? But I just like the mischief of it. No one knows how long we got left. Nothing really has a point to it. I don't mean that in a nihilist sense. The point is to experiment, I think. Or the point for me is. I'm not suggesting that is for everyone.
I guess, you make your own point. You define your own point.
Yeah.
You make your own meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's fleeting and not replicable. And the way that I will experience something will be different to the way that you experience it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is I can only describe it as I don't know why and I can't not do it. A lot of the time, I think I enjoy it more than I don't enjoy it. So it might be 51%, 49% sometimes, but overall, I think,
Speaking of having a point or not having a point, you have started a lot of pointless projects, which started off at pointless projects. And one of them is called the Lost Cat Project, or Not a Lost Cat Project. Tell me a bit about that project.
I mean, that's it. That one is such a good example of something not having a point, but being so compelling. So the abridged version of that story is I was walking my dog in the woods one day and I saw a real lost cat poster. And it was this magnificent cat with looked like a mountain lion with big ears, tiny little cross eyes. It was like quite a strange thing. And I almost didn't walk over to the poster. I saw it in the distance. And then it was just something in it was like, I'm going to go and see that poster. Arnie Mindell writes of this idea of quantum flirting, which is such a brilliant term. And that's the practice of being open to things calling to you. And I always say to people, if you want ideas, don't go looking for them. That's the worst thing to do. Your practice is to remain open to them whispering. So I went over and looked at this poster and I thought, that's interesting. And there was a bit at the bottom that said, take a photo of this poster to share with your friends and on social media to help bring him home. And I thought, that's a good way of spreading the word about your cat. But what if this person's cat isn't really missing? And this I always say this guy, I'm assuming it's a man, but I don't know, that this person just wanted their cat to go viral because it's such a brilliant cat. So I went home, it was a rainy day, and I painted a poster. It's a fake poster. I know it's a podcast, but it's also going to be on YouTube.
If you're watching this on YouTube, then you can see the poster that Steve made.
I just need to make sure it's in. Yeah, so that's the poster. So I painted this fake cat. And it says on it, this is not one of those posters about a lost cat. My cat isn't lost. In fact, I don't even have a cat. I just wanted to show you my painting of this magnificent beast. And then it says, reward yourself and buy this painting for £300. So it's a silly thing. There was no point to it, really. I did it because I was bored. I fancied painting that cat. And I put it on my Instagram. I almost didn't put it on my Instagram. And lots of people said, oh, this is amazing. Can we have it as a print? So I did a limited print run of like 30 prints.
What did people like about the poster?
I don't know. I think they just like the strangeness of it. I mean, lots of people over the years have said, that's such a bad painting of a cat. I don't think that's I haven't painted that thinking, look, this looks just like a real cat. But I think there's something about it that it's weird without... I didn't intend it to be a weird poster. And I think there's something about that when things try to be surreal, they end up not being surreal, or try to be weird. So there's just something compelling about it, maybe the way it looks. But the prints, I should have done a larger print run of 30 prints sold out in 48 hours.
Wow.
So I thought, there's something in this. So I got some posters printed up, and like from the money I made from the prints, and I put, 10 posters up in East London. All around Brick Lane, where a lot of the street art is, some outside the Tate Modern. And people kept seeing them and getting in contact with me saying, can I have one of these? This is amazing. And then a journalist found it on that first day and said, what's this about? And I said, I don't know. I don't know what this is about. Just some posters. And to cut a long story short, what happened?
You told them you don't know what it's about.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't write a story about it because I didn't have a story.
I love that.
Because I don't. It's like, it's not a movement. I just wanted to put some posters up. It seemed like a good idea. And I think it's always that. I wonder what would happen if I put these up.
And there's so much courage in just being able to admit that.
Right, yeah. I find it easier than having to have a reason. So, yeah. But then what happened, and I think this is one of the practices that I accidentally do in my work, is to remain free of outcome, to remain free of an objective. So that looking at the poster, painting the picture, selling the prints, turning into the posters, it's just started like an exponential thing where people would see a poster and then order a poster from me, and then they'd put it up and someone else would see it, and it just grew exponentially. And at the start, I'd send the posters out for free. But then I started getting requests from all around the world, from all over the UK. So I had to start charging postage, but they remained free. And at the time of speaking, so this is 2 years ago now, there's almost 4,000 posters in 55 countries on every continent on the planet, including Antarctica. And it's an amazing photo that someone sent me from Antarctica. When people ordered
how did it end up in Antarctica?
Well, it ended up, that one was slightly manipulated by me because they naturally went to every continent. And it's like, I don't know, I wanted to get one on Antarctica just so I could say it's conquered the planet. And I thought, you can't just send stuff to that. It's like, how do you even contact Antarctica? But on Instagram, there was a chef that was being posted to Antarctica because they're obviously remote there. They get some really good chefs in, who posted in the McMurdo station, the American station. And I just direct messaged him on Instagram and said, look, this is a weird question, but would you be willing to take one? And he said, yeah. And he said that he had such a tiny amount that he was allowed to pack because it's such a small space. So he smuggled one in and then he took the picture. So, which was amazing. But it just blows my mind of how crazy that went. And then some days I'd wake up and I'd have like 200 orders for Lost Cat posters. And it was in the Observer magazine, or it was on Zoe Ball's Breakfast Show on Radio 2 in the UK. It's in weird places, like it was in Modern Cat magazine. And so it just keeps spreading and spreading. And it just embodies that philosophy, I guess. I've done some talks just about the Lost Cat project to marketing people. And I've said, could you do that for us? And it's like, no, I couldn't, because it'd have a point to it. Because if it was like to sell cat food or you're trying to seed it, this naturally happened for people's curiosity. And I think people being compelled to be part of a pointless movement, to feel part of an artistic experiment. And it carries on to this day. It's gone quieter at the moment, which is always nice because I don't make any money from this. But yeah, it's just a crazy thing. If I'd sat down and thought, right, I'm going to create a poster, get 4,000 of them, 55 countries on every continent in the planet, it would never have happened. Never have happened. I'd had to let it happen.
Why do you think that?
Because I would have happened. First of all, I would have overthought it and then talked myself out of it. Because I would have thought, well, I need to work out a budget for it. I need to work out how I'm going to fund it, how I'm going to seed it around. I would have overthought it rather than let it naturally emerge. And I think that's one of the things. One of the practices in my work is the practice of leap, then look. Like I'll have a curious question, and then I need to try it before I talk myself out of it. And most of the projects have been like that. This is a very low-cost leap, then look, because it cost me, I don't know, 100 quid to do the prints that I then sold, and then whatever the posters now pay for themselves. But it wouldn't have happened in that way. And the same with any of the projects. And I think that's me testing that instinct that I was talking about earlier. The reason why I left a job, the reason why various things in my life have changed was just, I'm too attached to this being something in particular.
Wow. I mean, that is such an interesting story. And I'm trying to see like how this applies to our day-to-day where, for example, like I find it really difficult to put things out there because I might be like, oh, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
What if people think it's shit? And then people think I'm shit.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like a lot of people out there are in the same boat, where they might have a lot of ideas, but they don't put it out there for the world to see, for the fear of being judged or made fun of or whatever.
Well,
what advice would you have for
that's
people
that
like
intrinsic freedom that I was talking about. So we could think that there is the world of work and not work, or various things like that. You just named there beautifully that there is a fear inside you that a judgment will be made about the thing that you've put out there. So we're fearful of our spontaneous self-expression. And I think for me, a lot of the work I do, like workshops and stuff, is about rehabilitating spontaneity, learning to re-trust and recover choice. It doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to be spontaneous and blurting everything out, but you're going to have more choice and agency in that. Because I think early in life, the seeds of shame are sown when we're in creative flow and we're interrupted and shamed. Like I might be doodling at school and I'm told that's not what you do. Or I might be doing something weird as a child. I'm totally in flow. And then it's like, that's bad, that's naughty. And so we learn really early in life that actually we must mistrust our spontaneity because bad things may happen. And that's because we're kids and we don't know. But really we can recover some choice around that. It's like, what would happen if you put an idea out that you didn't know if it was shit or not? What really would, and I'm saying this is real fears that we have, so I'm not belittling them. What would you fear would happen if you put out something spontaneous?
Is that a question for me? Yeah, so I guess the first fear is this good enough for the world? Because I guess the world, in my mind, the world has high standards.
Yeah.
Because you see the works of great artists and designers, photographers, and then you try to compare your work, which in your mind looks pretty shitty compared to the greats, and you automatically put yourself down and you start to create scenarios in your head of, it's not ready yet. I need to kind of work on it a bit more, a bit longer, and it never goes out. Is
this good enough? And again, I love that phrase you used, the world has high standards. But again, if we bring that back down to this idea of projection, like if you spot it, you've got it. You point one finger forwards, four fingers back type of thing. It's like, no, you have high standards for your work. And others may have high standards of it. And I totally get this. I sort of don't care if anyone likes my artwork or not. But when it comes to music, I'm exactly the same. I won't put stuff out because I worry that people think it's shit. And I torture myself by playing at open mics and things like that.
Wait, so how is it different mindset for you when it comes to music?
I don't know yet.
Opposed to art?
I think it's that next edge for me. It's how I was with the art originally. I think maybe music's a bit more revealing, that with art you can put it up and run away or watch from a corner if you're performing. And particularly the open mic stuff I do is performing solo on a battered guitar, music that I've written, which normally tends to be from stuff in my life. It feels a lot more exposing and a lot more chance of being shamed and ridiculed. But over time, that's getting easier. And I think it's that immediacy of it. Where one of the first exhibitions I did was at a gallery in Derby, and someone invited me up that knew that I did some artwork, and I had to paint this mural directly onto the wall of the gallery. And I was thinking, oh God, they made a mistake here. This is going to be terrible. And ironically, the mural was of this creature asking the question, am I a bad drawing? And then when I went up, and I thought, the gallery's going to be shut. But I got up and the gallery was open. And not only that, they'd put a red rope around where I was going to be painting. And people kept walking in and going, oh, look, here's an artist at work. And I hated it. Absolutely terrible and excruciating. But I don't feel that edge anymore. So I think with music, the reason why I keep going to do these torturous things is it just feels like a new edge that I'm working. It gets slightly easier each time. The last one I did, I sort of didn't think it was that good, but I didn't care really as much as I did before. And for me, it's always like, what's this next edge? Why is that different? Surely that's in me and in my expectations of society and the norms that society has made around things such as music. I think you can hide a bit more in art.
So what you're saying is when it comes to music, you care more compared to your art?
Yeah, I care more about what people think of it. I think
Why?
I care the same amount about it. It's like I think, yeah, this is just a thing that I'm expressing in a different way, but I care more about what people think about it.
Why is that?
I don't know yet. My genuine answer is I don't know, but that's why I keep doing it. I think I don't know. I think maybe music's more important to me than I'd realised.
So is caring less better for our creativity?
That's a good question. It's tempting to just say yes, but I don't. I think it's more nuanced than that. I don't know. I think feedback loops are really important in this. So I'd never make any art for Instagram. And I say, maybe it's a bit flippant to say, I don't care if people like it or not. I'm not devastated if people don't like it. It's probably a more accurate thing. And I like it when people like it because it's almost like a little stroke or like a feedback loop. But like people are liking this, or they're inspired by it, or it's made them laugh, or it's made them confused, or it's made them angry. I mean, you want to provoke an action in art. So those feedback loops, I think, are really, really helpful. But I think I really care. I think I still really care in the art. There's something... it's a really good question. I'm less judgmental of myself in the art. So I'm more confident in it. If someone said, "Hey, can you do this drawing for me?" and I enjoyed doing it, I'd be more confident in that.
Yeah.
But I think that's it's a visceral edge for me. It's like I've done 15 open mics now, and I used to play in bands and stuff years ago. But there's something about that rawness. And before each one, I dread doing it. I try to talk myself out of doing it. I hate it during the process, and then afterwards I wish I hadn't done it every single time. And I might go and do another one this Wednesday. So, and it's not just torturing. It is helping me make sense of something in some way, but I don't know what yet.
Yeah. Yeah, because the reason I asked that question is, for example, like I am also a photographer on the side, and when I was starting out, I just didn't care what kind of photos I took. I just went out and took photos, lots and lots of photos, and that's how I got better, right? And I used to put them on Instagram, got 5 likes. I didn't care, because I wasn't really doing it for the like, because I really enjoyed it. And slowly but surely, I got better, I got more followers, more likes, and eventually, I won a few awards. And now, I seem to care more about what work I put out there. Right. I'm like, oh, you know what? I can't put out shitty work. People have certain expectations of me. And now I just don't post as much because I only post some of my best work. And I feel like that kind of has made me feel less creative and less in flow. Yeah. Because I'm not creating and going out and shooting as much.
What do you think that is? Is it that? Yeah, I'm fascinated by that.
Because I've just set myself much higher expectations now. I'm not, experimenting as much. I'm like, if I create something, it has to be great. Yeah.
I think I can relate to that. It's like, I'm very discerning about what I'll put out on Instagram or put in my shop or something. So it isn't just like any old thing. I have to love it as well. I have to really love the thing, and because if I'm not going to love it, no one else is. And that for me feels different of having a high standard. And it's that thing of intentionality, isn't it? It's like if I hate commissions and I hate deadlines because I can't, for that similar reasons, I can't do it. It just feels like it has to be pressured. I can't allow stuff to emerge. That's what it made me think of when you were saying that. It's almost like we can get to a stage where we're trying too hard to make something good. For me, it's when I lived on, this story, but I'll say it for the podcast. I lived on Ocracoke Island off the coast of the US for all of January last year. It was an art experiment. It was never, it was another thing that came out of nowhere that ended up being an art residency. And I put a lot of it on social media. There was a crowd fund to pay for art materials. The guy that was funding it paid for my flights and the accommodation, and then he paid for fellow artist JD Wolf to come out for the last couple of weeks. And I got there and I got to Ocracoke and I had this £800 of art materials sitting there. I had patrons that were expecting updates from me. And
no pressure.
But exactly. I just didn't want to make anything. And I kept thinking I should paint some stuff. It's like, what can I paint? And I was like, I get some material and think, no, I need to be productive. And that was just killing it. I was just stuck in that loop. So I decided I'm only going to make stuff that spontaneously emerges, that suddenly is like, oh, fuck, I need to make this. And that was so difficult for 3 days. I made nothing, absolutely nothing. I didn't feel like making it. I started feeling really down. It's like, oh, I really have stuck my neck out too far here. I'm really not an artist. And I felt so fed up and alone and down. I thought I need to get lost. I just need to get utterly lost, which is easy on Ocracoke. And I rode my crappy bike to the beach and just went walking, really blustery day. And then I found some driftwood that had washed up. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And I looked at it and there was nice patterns on it. And I thought, that will look really good if I was to spray it white. And I sprayed it white and I thought, oh, that's good. And then I painted it and then I found another bit of driftwood. And to cut a long story short, I made this sign that said, I need to be alone. And I installed it on the beach and just thought, oh. And it took me about 2 or 3 hours, but I loved making it. It naturally emerged as something. And then that led to a whole chain of events where the locals saw it, they found out about me, ended up making more driftwood work, made some stuff with Jo when she came out. We got a radio show from it, and then there was an article in the paper, and it just spread from there. But that was such a fundamental lesson for me, because those first 3 days was like, you must be productive. You have to make good stuff. You have to give people value for money. And I think for me, that's where I get stuck. And it's where with Instagram, it can be a curse, my job is to be fascinated by stuff. Instagram's a window into my world. It's not my world. It's like, I don't make stuff for it. If I've not made anything over the last week, there'll be nothing on Instagram. And then there's stuff around pacing and algorithms and things like that. But I think we can get it the other way around, where we're just a slave to content. And then that puts pressure on ourselves to be productive. But if I'd been productive in Ocracoke, none of those things would have happened. None of those brilliant things would have happened. I had to get lost. I had to resist being productive.
I love that. So you basically, rather than forcing yourself into creating work, you let go of that and you allowed things to happen instead.
Yeah. I guess it's another form of that quantum flirting. It's the process of relaxing and being open to, being permeable, rather than tensing up. And that's where I always think money screws everything up. Particularly if we really need to earn money, like if we're really close to the breadline, or we need money to survive or feed our children, or that's just even in the UK. And if you're living in poverty, that's got to really change that stuff. But money starts to screw it up, because as soon as there's money, at least for me, it's like there's a perceived value to it then. And it normally comes with a deadline and an expectation. So that's where I do commissions. But with my artwork, it's like, here's stuff I've made. If you want to buy it, you can buy it. But I don't really make on demand, because it feels too pressured. Yeah.
And I personally find that creating these intentional spaces to get lost in is really important for our creative well-being.
Yeah.
Because we might not have that space of flexibility in our day job, which might be very regimented. And personally, I feel like that can really suck the soul out of our existence.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be deliberate in terms of creating spaces outside of maybe our day job to do this.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. And for me, it's... My friend Rob Poynton described it. He wasn't describing this, but I just suddenly remembered his analogy. He said, it's like trying to learn to ride a unicycle. If you try to learn to ride a unicycle and your objective is to not fall off and lose your balance, it won't work. Riding a unicycle is continually correcting how unbalanced you are. So you're always unbalanced. And I think it's a similar thing. Like, if I have too much space, I don't like it. If I'm too restricted, I don't like it. And so it's just that continually rebalancing. Like last week, being immersed in this piece of group work I was doing 5 days a week. Traveling to the same place every day was too much for me. The week before, I had nothing, and I'm just bored and fed up and can't be motivated. So I think it's constantly, again, not trying to seek an answer, but constantly thinking, how am I doing right now? What do I need right now? Do I need more or less structure? Do I have more or less freedom right now?
How do you find that balance? Like, is there some kind of self-reflection technique you have? Or, how do you kind of identify that balance?
As per all of my answers, the immediate answer is I don't know. Because I don't think it's a cognitive, intentional thing. But I could tell you right now, I feel a good balance, that I have space and I have intentional things like this conversation. And I can sort of look at my diary and think, all right, yeah, that type of thing. But it's a felt response. But it can be, I mean, my own practices are, I mean, I've always got stuff to make art with. If I'm finding things difficult, I make art about finding things difficult. I run regularly, and I find that really helps, just clear stuff. If I've got a talk to write, the first thing I do is go for a run. By the time I've come back, I've got the structure of the talk. So there's a lot of counterintuitive things like that work for me. I think to bring structure to it and have a dedicated practice just wouldn't work for me. But yes, that constant scanning. I know when I'm doing well and I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
And therapy. I've worked with my therapist for like 6 years, and I think that's, again, it's less now of a taboo of having a therapist. Like, you work with a therapist because you're broken. I think you work with a therapist because you want to get to know yourself. You don't have to have a particular thing to take. So that's part of my practice as well, just uncovering these layers.
And another crazy project that you did was called The Sound of Silence, which is a podcast where you basically invited a guest, and you had 100 episodes of this, right? Where you invited 100 people, and on each episode, you basically would just sit with them, not saying anything, not saying a word. That's pretty weird.
Yeah.
Tell me about this.
That started with no... I had a bit more of an intention, but still, I think an intention and an objective is something different. So my intention was, I wonder what would happen if I recorded a silent podcast. And it came from, most of these things, the cat's different. It comes from noticing a pattern or a norm that's unchallenged and coming up with a subversive way of just testing it. So like the other projects, that came from a curious question where I think someone had sent me some podcast about leadership or something, and it said, here's all you need to know about leadership. And I'm not anti-podcast. I mean, I like podcasts. I'm on one now. But I started thinking that everyone was just doing a podcast without much to say on it. It was just like mainly ego-driven. And so I was running. I can remember the exact woods where I was running when I came up with the idea. I thought, what would the opposite of a podcast be? Well, it'd be nothing. Downloadable nothing. Yeah, what if you just downloaded silence, like John Cage's 4 minutes 33 record that recorded years ago? And I thought, what would make it even weirder if it's not just silence, but it's silence recorded with someone? And what would make it even weirder is, what if they were like well-known people, like celebrities and things like that? And I thought that's a good enough question for me. I came up with a working title, Sound of Silence, which I never really liked, but it ended up being the final title. I registered the domain soundofsilence.org.uk and then just said on social media, June this year, I'm going to be hosting the world's first silent podcast featuring special guests. 100 episodes featuring 2 minutes of silence every week. And it's sort of like those constraints. And that's my leap then look. I've now announced it. It makes it more difficult to back off. And then I thought, 100 weeks of a weekly podcast. That's like 2 years. That's a long time. And that was it. Yeah. It was really difficult. I mean, the episodes were literally, I'd say there were 2 phases to the project. First one was the podcast, which was, I'd say, welcome to Sound of Silence. Today's guest is Nirish. And hello. And you say hello. Then we'd sit in silence for 2 minutes. And then at the end I'd say, thank you for joining me, Nirish. And you say, thank you. So it's a tiny little bit of speech to punctuate the silence. But it's really difficult to get people to go on a silent podcast because they think it's a gimmick or a joke. So I started off by asking people who were reasonably well known that I knew, and they went on it. And then when I had enough episodes, it became a bit easier. My first big name was comedian Vic Reeves, or Jim Moyer, the artist, same person. And I wrote to Jim's agent, and they said, yeah, he's up for it. And he was like a comedy hero of mine when I was growing up. So went all the way to his house and recorded Silence. And then it just kept...
So you did these in person?
Yeah, all of them were in person. So again, I think if you're going to have... Again, this might sound contradictory to people that are interested in design, but even in improvisation, there's structure. But it's an enabling... What are the enabling constraints here? Because if it's just, I'm just going to do a silent podcast, it's a bit like having a blank sheet of paper. Whereas the constraints that I built in up front to give it a bit more oomph were 100 episodes, all recorded face-to-face, centred around 2 minutes of silence. Because there was something around the face-to-face that there's a philosophical bit, which is I'm recording the silence that arises between people in a physical space. And also, it would be too easy, it felt, just to do it on Zoom and stuff like that. So they're all recorded face-to-face. I spent a fortune on train travel. One episode, I flew all the way to Berlin to record with someone that wasn't...
For 2 minutes?
Yeah, but they weren't in Berlin when I got there. They were in... And so it's... But it was such an adventure. And the same with all of the projects, that there are moments where I hate them. I hate it. I hate doing it. I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Particularly lockdown hit just as I was getting to the end of Sound of Silence. So I think there's 11 episodes left to go. I had and always had about 7 queued up in advance. And then lockdown hit, and it's just like, how am I going to do this? So I managed to still record a bit in lockdown when restrictions were lifted. But for some of the weeks that I couldn't put out an episode, I put out the best of. So it's like the best of 10 episodes of Silence. And some of them become the most listened to episodes. It's crazy. And again, some people thought it was ridiculous. Some people hated it. I mean, some people were really annoyed with it. But it's like, why getting annoyed? Just don't listen to it. But then lots of people listened to it. I think its peak, it was like 15 to 20,000 downloads of episodes from around the world. But people would write and say, I love this podcast. It's about peace, or it's about mental health, or it's about loneliness, or it's about anxiety.
So they were kind of making their own interpretation.
Exactly, and that's a really important thing that I learned from that project is, in terms of my creative projects, it's can I create enough of a container that's empty for people to pour into it what they want. And so whatever people thought of the Sound of Silence is right for them, because it didn't have an intention. It wasn't about anything. And that's what I love about art and abstract art, is people will pour into it what they need to know. Like, really, an art gallery is just a hall of mirrors, which you go around and reflects back parts of you that you're not seeing or you're seeing.
Wow.
So Sound of Silence, we got to 100 episodes, and what was good is another thing in my project. I always think projects should end well at a peak and end intentionally. This whole idea of you innovate before you hit a peak. I like to kill projects before they hit a peak. So Sound of Silence, 100 episodes, lots of downloads. It would have been so easy to carry on going. But it's like, no, I'm going to stop. And then
like The Simpsons.
Yeah, exactly. It ends up going a bit, nah. So,
just for the money.
Yeah,
just for the views.
And again, that was another thing, because I made no money from Sound of Silence. In fact, it cost me money. There wasn't that incentive to just keep going to make the money. And it's, the second phase of the project was I cut off the speech from both ends of the podcast, and it's just an online gallery of silence now. 100 pictures of the guests, and it's just such a diverse mix of guests. And you just click on it and listen to the silence. Make of it what you want.
What were your key learnings from that project?
I think that start before you're ready. Like, again, if I'd thought that through, start before you're ready, leap then look. If I'd thought that through too much, I would never have done it, because it's a stupid idea. It's going to cost me time and money. I might not get any guests. So I think, again, just going with that instinct of this is a question or something I want to explore that feels compelling enough that it's going to have momentum. And there's so many ideas I have that will go nowhere. But that's one of the ones about do something because you're fascinated by it. And it's just like, I I really want to meet David Shrigley. So I invited him on the podcast and he said yes, and I went to meet him. And he's got a bit of my artwork in his studio now, and I've got some of his. So just do what you're fascinated by. And the other thing is, that difference between intention and objective. My intention was, I wonder what would happen if I did a silent podcast. But I didn't really care where it got to. Same with The Lost Cat. It's just, I wonder what would happen if I put these posters up, or with some of the other projects that I've done.
I think one of the challenges that a lot of us face, especially when you're busy with work, let's say with family, with commitments, that it can be very difficult to even know what you're fascinated with, what you're curious about, because you're just so busy with the doing and making a living, paying the bills, looking after your family. What are some of the smallest things that people can do to start to discover or rediscover what fascinates them, what they're curious about?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Because that's one of the downsides to saying be fascinated. It's like, what am I fascinated in? And again, it's why I like the title of your podcast, because I think it, again, is tuning back into our body. What brings us small moments of peace or harmony or excitement in our body? What's something that you can immerse yourself in, the type of thing that it changes our experience of time when we immerse ourselves in it. And it doesn't have to be something that we'd universally regard as creative. I'm doing air quotes for those watching and listening to the podcast. Because, again, I think of creativity as a moment-by-moment experience of freedom of spontaneous self-expression. And
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I might not be able to because it was improvised. It's our moment-by-moment experience of our freedom of spontaneous self-expression. That may come out in a painting that I'm doing. It may come out in an Excel spreadsheet I'm fascinated by. It may come out in looking at leaves on the road. It may come out in someone that's an airline pilot and how it doesn't, the content is neither creative nor not, but it's what is that thing that utterly fascinates you? And it can be, I think it could be a really simple thing. But the key to this, I learned this from, I've heard many people say it, but I learned it from a mentor of mine called Keith Johnson, who's a theatre director. I did lots of improv training with him. He used to train us to go on stage and just be interested. He'd say, don't go on and try and be interesting, just go on and be interested, because interested people are interesting. And I take Keith's words further, and it's like fascinated people are fascinating. And because I think there's a difference between interested and fascinated. Interested is like, yeah, I'm sort of interested in that. I'm interested in sharks, which I am, but I don't devote my entire life to studying sharks. Whereas something I'm fascinated by, it's like there's no choice. I'm just fascinated by it. What's the things that you really have to, that you can't not do? And so with all of my work now, I'm just being fascinated and letting people see it. And some people find it fascinating. But that tuning into one small thing, I don't know, maybe it is just to reflect on what's, noticing your body and your breathing and just your internal senses and your emotions as you think of different things. And when was a moment when you was most aware of them or not? Yeah. Also, I think time standing still or time seemingly being different is a clue to what's fascinating. I mean, we've been talking for a long time now. It doesn't feel like any time at all. I'm fascinated by this conversation. If I was watching a webinar on, I don't know, I can't even think of a boring webinar, but there's loads out there. For half an hour, it would drag. Yeah. So I think time is a good clue to that as well.
So the way I heard that was be aware of what makes you feel good inside and what makes time just flow.
Yeah. And it may not be, the qualifier I put on that is, it may not even be good inside, but it does something that's interesting. It may be like, oh, that's really making my stomach feel like butterflies, and there's a sense of nervous excitement there. Yeah. Because anxiety and excitement, somatically at least, are the same thing. They obviously manifest in different ways. So it'd just be noticing something. It's like you get moments like in a meeting, if you sit in meetings where someone will say something, it feels like the air in the room changes and your body temperature changes. It's like, oh, something interesting's happened here. But yeah, just becoming curious about that, the smallest thing.
I love that.
But the main thing I would say is don't go looking for it. I think if you go looking for what you're fascinated, you try too hard and it becomes like work. So just remain open.
How do you find
to
something without going to look for it?
Yeah, I think it's remaining open to it. This idea of quantum flirting, of hearing it, allowing it to call. And I'll often do that with coaching clients. Like they'll have a really difficult question that I don't particularly understand, and I'll just invite them to, let's go for a walk somewhere, let's do something with no intention, then just be open to something might call to you in this moment, but don't go looking for it. And then things like, I remember once just walking past a bookshop and the guys were just going, oh shit, and you run over to the window and he's pointing at, because that's it. I've no idea what was going on for him, but something made sense to him. So it's counterintuitive, isn't it? It's like, and I think a lot of the keys to the mysteries of being human sit in paradox and things that don't make sense and cause dissonance. We try to resolve them because it doesn't feel good for us. But yeah, I think that's how you find something without looking for it. That's a good Zen koan, maybe, isn't it? How do you find something without looking for it?
Yeah. This kind of, it reminds me of Taoism.
Yeah.
Like I was recently reading a book, The Tao of Pooh, and there was a lot of kind of things I absolutely found fascinating in terms of how Pooh lives and does and bees, which is about just letting things happen around you without trying to force yourself into it. And that is, one of my themes for the year, which is to just play with that purpose and to have more faith in the universe that you will be safe and okay in the end. And I think the really important thing in all of that is don't fear being a contradiction. It's like I'm saying I'm open to all of this, but then when I get really short on money, I might start panicking, or I do start panicking and do something else. And it's like, but Steve, you've said that. Yeah, I'm a contradiction. Human beings are contradictions. There's one of the existential philosophers that I liked. He had a quote that said, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And we're so obsessed with consistency. Being consistent, be a contradiction. It's much more fun. But be aware of it. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I love that. So, Steve, I'm just conscious of the time. Another thing that I had on my list was the masks workshop. Do you think we have time to kind of talk about that, or shall we start to wrap up things?
No, we can talk about that briefly, because I think that is probably a good way of talking about practical ways in which people can free up. So yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay. So, Steve, another thing that actually I'm super fascinated about you is this thing that you run called the Masks Workshop, where you gather people and you hand them over some masks that they put on. I haven't been able to attend one of these workshops, but I've been super fascinated by this. Tell me about these workshops.
Yeah, the mask workshops are my absolute favourite workshops to run. And I do them less frequently because they're just exhausting and mind-blowing. But I learned masks originally from Keith Johnson, who I mentioned earlier. And he like just brought some masks out at one of the workshops I was at with him. And the way he works is you put on the mask, you look in the mirror, and you allow spontaneous stuff to come out. But the moment Keith thinks that you're thinking and not just allowing it to be spontaneous, he says, take it off. So I didn't want to do it. I tried it and I hated it, and I thought I got it wrong. And I wore the mask for about 5 seconds. I thought, I'm never going back to that. But again, it was that thing of like, oh no, but there was something there. It's like, I always think it's like eating food that's too spicy. Afterwards you go, I'm not eating that again. And then a week later you're eating it again. So I just become compelled by masks, trained with lots of different people, and just come up with my own way of working with them. So the workshop, really the mask is a pattern interrupt. And that's what I'm interested in all of my work, like the projects we've spoken about, my artwork, is being a way to invite people, at least to interrupt habitual patterns, to allow people to question, no, does it have to be like this? And the mask does that for a really important pattern, which is our sense of self and our sense of identity. So at a mask workshop, there's one this Friday. There's only 10 people at them to keep them intimate and to give people enough time. I will work in a similar way that Keith Johnson did, with getting people to experience themselves as different using the mask and the mirror and allowing characters to arise from the body. It's really difficult to explain without doing it, but the masks on your face will look nothing like they are on the table. It's just a freaky thing in working this way, that you don't recognize yourself in a way that you'd never have expected. And then different voices might come out, or different forms of expression. And the way that I work with people, I'm spotting what the mask is doing, or what the person's doing, and I'm feeding stuff back to try and develop it further. And it's amazing. It's like people that can't do public speaking will do a 3-minute eloquent, faultless, without any ums and ahs, improvised talk.
Or how does that happen?
I don't know. People that can't sing would sing and find a voice. I'm not saying that they're suddenly a operatic tenor, or people that can't dance. People that
they feel more free to express themselves.
Yeah, it's something like that, and it's not. I don't think it's the anonymity of the mask. It just a therapist friend of mine came on my mask workshops, and he says it allows us to access repressed or unowned parts of our personality. And it's just all of these parts of us that at some point we've discarded as this isn't of value, or this isn't good enough, or this is embarrassing. And it's amazing that people just experience themselves different. And one of the core things in Gestalt is, we just work with awareness, deepening awareness to recover choice. So noticing the body, the mind, all of that. And at the heart of Gestalt is a thing from Arnie Beiser called the paradoxical theory of change. And that says we get more change by becoming more deeply aware of who we already are, rather than striving to be something we're not. That's the opposite of most ways we think about personal development. And I think what the mask does is it deepens an awareness of this thing we already are that we didn't even know. And that awareness is enough to start to recover some choice. And yeah, it's mind-blowing every time. I can't prepare for a mask workshop other than make sure the masks are clean, get them to the room, get the room set up, because I don't know what's going to happen.
Wow.
But it's like an unfreezing or a melting of personality. And I think that's a similar thing. You don't have to, it's an extreme version, but you don't have to have a mask to do that. It's like some of the things we were talking about earlier. Like if you wanted to go and do a photo shoot now, what would happen if you found a hat and maybe some different shoes that you'd never normally wear, and go out and think, right, I'm going to take photographs as this person. You don't necessarily need a mask. But it's ways of short-circuiting, I guess, our idealized self-images that we can't be these things.
So essentially you're kind of using these external tools to reframe some of our belief systems and perspectives. Yeah,
and it's I'm doing it without it being attached to anything in particular. So it's the individual wearing it is doing the reframing without even knowing they're doing the reframing. Yeah. I guess it's not the same, but it's why some people are comfortable or uncomfortable with fancy dress parties. So you can get the really flamboyant people that love fancy dress parties and the people that hate it. But what's the fascinating one is someone that's normally a certain way and they go to a fancy dress party as, I don't know, Donald Trump or Julian Clary or someone, and then suddenly this other part of their personality is coming out. And I think it just gives us that range, a broader range of ourselves to work with then. Even like people that feel that they're not assertive enough will practice, be more assertive in a mask, or people that often don't express anger might express lots of anger through a mask, and it's like quite cathartic.
Does it depend on what masks they're wearing?
Yeah,
if there's like a mask of an angry character, it brings out more anger? Or?
Sort of. None of them, all of the masks I've seen be totally different. I don't have any with me here at the moment. But I've seen on the table, all the masks look similar-ish. They all look very masculine because they don't have hair and stuff like that. But I could pick up one mask and it's been male, female, or no gender at all. It's been angry, it's been old, it's been young, it's been a little girl or an old man, Also, skin tone, which is why I make a lot of the masks myself, because I can get a real variety of skin tone. It sort of all merges. And quite often in a mask workshop, I'll be sitting there watching the person in the mask, and I'll be thinking, I have no idea who this is. And you get weird things like you suddenly see the eyebrows or the cheeks flush on the mask, and of course they can't because it's plastic. But it's the combination of the mask and the human wearing it and their body that creates an utterly unique character. And that's why I try and make the masks not too leading. Some of the early ones I made were like, I'll try and make this person look angry. But even with that, different things come out. And you have 10 people at the workshop, but really you have 70 participants by the end of it, because they've all bought different things.
Wow. There's like all these permutation and combinations of characters that come out.
And it's amazing. I often do improvised TED Talks at the mask workshop, where we'll all come up with a stupid title of a TED Talk. They'll go in a hat. And someone will walk on stage, like in the mask, and as they walk on stage, I will announce the title of the talk, and they just do these amazing improvised talks for 3 minutes. People that at the start of the day were saying, oh, I can't improvise, I can't speak, I can't do that. And it's, well, you can, can't you? And it's a fascinating thing. It's like, so what was it about that? The mask isn't magic. What was it about that gave me permission to express myself in that way? And having known that I can do it with a mask, then I can do it anytime. So the question then becomes, it's not that I can do that, it's where am I inhibited? Back to that intrinsic, extrinsic freedom. Mm. But it's they're not for everyone, the workshops. I quite often get invited to do them in the corporate world, like as a leadership development program. And I have to say no, because it's like, you can't do like, module 1 is accounting, module 2 is strategy, module 3 is going to fuck with your mind with masks, module 4, it's got to be something that you're interested in and you feel resourced to do. But it's really amazing, powerful
So who
stuff.
attends these workshops then?
It's a real mix of people. I've got a bias because I teach on the coaching masters at Ashridge, so I get a bias of coaches and consultants. I've had artists, teachers. I try and keep them as cheap as possible so that anyone can access them. Therapists, anyone really. So it's a mix, but it tends to be people mainly in the field of creativity, innovation, or self-development, or a helping profession. Mm. But anyone can be part.
It kind of reminds me a bit of Edward de Bono's six thinking hats.
Yeah.
How putting on a different hat might help you bring out a different aspect of how you think.
Yeah, exactly. And that's essentially what mask work is, an extreme version of that. And it's just like if we sat differently here and like breathed differently, we're going to have a different type of conversation. Maybe different questions would come out. So I think we play on such a tiny range of ourselves. We play on such a tiny range of our cognition, let alone everything else that's going on, our bodies and our sensations and all of that. So that's my interest in the mask work. But for me as a facilitator, it's so intense that I just need to sort of lay down for the weekend after it. Because it's so funny, but also so intense. Because I'm coaching and facilitating this thing that doesn't know what it is, and it's
wow. Yeah. So you have one coming up in May.
Yes.
Friday the 17th, 2024. It's from 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. in the Umbrella Rooms.
Yes,
in London.
That's in Shaftesbury Avenue. Yeah.
Nice. So we'll put the details for that workshop in the show notes and also the YouTube description as well. So if you're interested in attending this workshop with Steve, please do check it out. I would highly recommend it. And if I can make it, I'll be there as well. I'll try to be there.
Yeah, thank you.
So Steve, what's something that you believed about yourself or you thought was true about yourself has now changed in the last, let's say, 2 years or 2 to 5 years?
I think it's the thing that I've been talking about all along, but maybe more so in the last 5 years, is I'm not broken. The way in which I think and I see the world and I engage isn't wrong, or abnormal, or I think it's that. So it's switching to the positive of, why don't I embrace that rather than think, this is something to be fixed or to paper over. I think that feels like a really important shift for me.
Wow, love that. Now I'm gonna get you to scale that up a bit, and again, same question. What's something that you believed was true about the world or the systems that you operate in that has changed in the past 2 to 5 years?
I don't know about 2 to 5 years, but
Or
I think
any
but
time range.
I think it's the same thing. But in the last 2 to 5 years, it's exponentially grown. There are no answers. There are no answers. There is no solution. There is no thing. There is like, we engage with the world and lives like there is an answer there, but I can't quite find it yet. But if I just do this, and that relaxing into, there is no answer. There is only your moment by moment experience. And this is why I'm big into existential philosophy. I think that's changed even more. I'm much more comfortable, or much less uncomfortable, knowing there's no answers. It's never easy. It just becomes a familiar discomfort. Less attached, maybe. Definitely less attached.
Yeah. Nice. And now let's imagine that it's your last day on Earth and you're on your deathbed, and someone comes up to you with a tiny post-it and a Sharpie and says, Steve, could you please write your last few words for the world or for humanity? What would you write on the tiny post-it?
I think I'd just write down, I don't know. And that would be...
Could you elaborate?
Yeah, I think that would be it. And maybe a smiley face, because I think people would read it as, I don't know, as a problematic thing. It's just that acceptance, I guess, on my deathbed. Like, I don't know what all of that was about, those last years. I don't know what's next. I don't even know what this moment is. And that's sort of what it's all about. I think they'd be really confused by it. I mean, hopefully if I drew a smiley face on it, it would sell for a lot of money. So whoever inherits my vast fortune would get that. But yeah, I think that would be a nice counterintuitive thing. And then I'd like that because it would make people wonder for years, like, what did he mean? I don't know. What did he mean? But then that would be the point. I want to provoke curiosity.
Nice. I mean, I usually try to summarize my key takeaways from my conversation with guests, but I'm not sure if I should this time, because I don't want to bias the interpretation of whoever is listening right now. So I'm probably going to leave it for this time and let people interpret this conversation in whatever way they feel necessary for them. But Steve, thank you so much for joining us. How can people get in touch with you or follow you online or attend one of your workshops if they would like to? Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's one of those fascinating moments that I don't know where the time has gone. And it looks like it's getting dark, so it's obviously been a long amount of time. Find me on social media, mainly Instagram, but I'm on the other ones, at Steve XOH. And on my Instagram, there's a link that goes through to everything else. And the best website would be canscorpionsmoke.com. So all one word, canscorpionsmoke.com. Can they?
That's a different question. But people can research that as well. There's a whole story behind where that came from. And maybe for a future episode. But yeah, on that, there's a link to artwork, there's a link to my shop, there's a link to workshops, some stuff that I wrote, and all sorts of stuff. Someone described my website as, it's like going to IKEA. You don't find what you're looking for, but you leave with a load of stuff you didn't know you needed.
I love that.
And people always comment on the branding of the website. I mean, it's just a load of stuff that I cobbled together. It really, it sort of models that way. But yeah, that'd be the two ways to get in touch.
Amazing. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Steve. And we will hopefully see you again soon on Design Feeling. If not, we'll try to catch up over a beer soon. And have a great day.
Excellent.
And speak soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So, what did you think of the conversation? What's the one thing that stood out to you? Drop it in the comments below, and please consider giving this video a like and a subscribe if you'd like to support this channel and get this video out to more people. And feel free to drop me a line if you'd like to share any thoughts or ideas or maybe suggestions for any topics or guests that you'd like to see. See you next time.